Crack. That was the sound of my $92,000 custom tanzanite necklace hitting the granite countertop. My niece Skylar giggled as the white gold chain twisted and snapped into pieces. Andy, Maya, Mom says your jewelry is costume. Anyway, so it doesn't really matter, right? I stared at the shattered stone, then looked at my sister Cassandra, who was sipping her mimosa with a smirk plastered across her face. Nobody sitting at that table understood the truth. They assumed I was just a florist who arranged cheap bouquets for backyard weddings. They had absolutely no idea I was the anonymous benefactor funding Skylar's $110,000 Juilliard tuition. I picked up the broken pieces of my necklace and smiled a cold, hard smile. That night, I logged into the foundation portal and clicked terminate funding. Before I tell you how I demolished their house of cards, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been the family scapegoat who finally fought back. My name is Maya Bennett, and at 32 years old, I own 4 patents for rare biotech compounds used in pharmaceutical development. My bank account looks like an international phone number, but to my family, I'm just the dark-skinned sister who likes playing with flowers. The disrespect started the moment I pulled into the circular driveway of Cassandra and Derek's mansion in Sugar Land, Texas. The house was a sprawling Mediterranean monstrosity that screamed new money and underwater mortgage. My practical Honda looked completely out of place next to the leased luxury vehicles lining the drive. I took a deep breath and grabbed the gift bag from the passenger seat. This was supposed to be a celebration for Skylar getting accepted into Juilliard's vocal performance program. I wanted to be a good aunt. I walked up the travertine steps, smoothing down my linen dress. It was simple, custom-made, and cost more than Cassandra's entire spring wardrobe. But to them, it probably looked like something from a discount bin. Before I could even ring the doorbell, the heavy mahogany door swung open. My mother, Gloria, stood there blocking the entrance like a nightclub bouncer. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe, and her lip curled in that familiar expression of profound disappointment. "Maya, what on earth are you wearing?" My mother hissed, keeping her voice low so the guests inside wouldn't hear. "You look like you just came from pruning rose bushes. We have important people here today. People from the Opera Guild Board. You're going to ruin the aesthetic we've created." I looked down at my dress. It was clean pressed and completely appropriate for a family celebration. "Mom, it's just a Sunday brunch," I said, trying to step past her. She placed a firm hand on my chest, stopping me cold. "Not through the front door looking like that. Cassandra is doing a live stream in the foyer right now for her followers. Go around to the side entrance through the mudroom, and for God's sake, take off that jacket. It looks like something you found at a garage sale." The sting was familiar and sharp. My mother had always treated Cassandra like royalty because of her light skin and what she called her marketable features. I was the dark one, the one she told to stay out of the Texas sun, the one she expected to serve rather than shine. I swallowed the painful lump forming in my throat. I could have turned around right then and there. I could have driven back to my penthouse and forgotten they existed. But I wanted to give Skylar her gift. I wanted to believe that maybe the next generation would be different, that maybe she could see value beyond skin tone. I walked around the side of the house, through the wet grass and decorative landscaping, completely ruining my Italian leather flats. When I entered through the mudroom, the catering staff looked at me with obvious pity. I kept my head held high and walked into the dining room. The air conditioning was blasting at full power, and the room smelled of expensive perfume mixed with barely concealed desperation. My brother-in-law, Derek, was holding court at the head of the table. Derek was a white car salesman who specialized in selling luxury vehicles to people who couldn't actually afford the payments. He was loud, taking up too much space, swirling a glass of whiskey that I knew was the cheapest brand poured into an expensive crystal decanter for appearance. "Ah, look who finally decided to show up," Derek boomed as I entered the room, his voice carrying across the space. "The family florist has arrived. How's the flower arranging business going, Maya? Did you wash the pollen off your hands before you came in? We don't want plant residue on the upholstery." The guest chuckled nervously, looking between him and me. I ignored him completely and found my assigned seat at the far end of the table, near the kitchen door. Of course, that's where they positioned me, away from the camera angles, away from the elaborate centerpieces, away from anything that mattered. Cassandra sat across from Derek, absolutely glowing in a sequin dress that was far too tight and way too bright for a Sunday brunch. She barely glanced in my direction. She was too preoccupied checking the viewer count on her phone, which was propped up against an expensive wine glass. "Hi, Cassandra," I said softly, placing the small gift box on the table in front of me. "Congratulations to Skylar. This is for her." Cassandra glanced at the box without even touching it. "Oh, thanks so much, Maya. Just put it over there with the other gifts." She waved a perfectly manicured hand toward a pile of flashy presents on the sideboard. "Probably another book about plants, right? Skylar is a vocalist, Maya. She appreciates nice things, not homework assignments." She didn't even open it to see what was inside. Inside that carefully wrapped box was a vintage pitch pipe I had won at an auction in Vienna, something absolutely priceless for a true musician. But to Cassandra, if it didn't have a designer logo emblazoned across it, it was basically trash. I sat down quietly and unfolded my napkin. My niece Skylar sat 2 seats away from me, scrolling through TikTok and ignoring everyone around her. She was 18, genuinely talented, and completely spoiled by parents who saw her as a ticket to fame rather than a human being with actual potential. "So Maya," Derek shouted down the table, making absolutely sure everyone could hear him clearly, "I've got a dealership client coming up next week. Big estate sale in River Oaks. The owners need someone to clear out the overgrown gardens in the back. Minimum wage position. But I figured you could use the extra cash since your flower business is probably struggling right now." I took a measured sip of water. "My biotech division just signed a $3.2 million licensing deal last Tuesday, Derek. I think I'm doing just fine financially." Derek laughed loudly, a harsh barking sound that made several guests flinch. Sure, Maya, always the big dreamer. I'm just trying to help you out here. You know, we worry about you. A single woman your age playing with flowers all day. It's not exactly dignified or sustainable long term." My mother, Gloria, chimed in from her seat next to Skylar, her voice dripping with false concern. "Derek is absolutely right, Maya. You should be grateful he's looking out for your future. Look at your sister. She married extremely well. She maintains a beautiful home. You could learn so much if you stopped being so stubborn about everything and just fixed yourself up properly." Fixed myself up. That was code for change. Everything fundamental about who I was. Code for bleach my skin, straighten my natural hair, and marry someone who would treat me like a decorative accessory instead of a partner. I looked around the elaborately set table. The crystal was fake, Waterford. The smiles were rehearsed and tight. The mounting debt was suffocating them. They were actively drowning in a sea of their own creation, and they were desperately using me as a convenient life raft for their fragile egos. They needed someone to look down on so they could feel temporarily tall. And then Skylar looked up from her phone screen. Her eyes immediately landed on my necklace, on the raw tanzanite pendant I had commissioned from a jeweler in Cape Town, South Africa. It was deep blue violet, rough cut, and wrapped in matte white gold. To an untrained, unsophisticated eye, it looked like a random rock someone picked up off the ground. "Ew, Annie Maya," Skylar said, wrinkling her nose in obvious disgust. "What is that thing around your neck? It looks like a chunk of purple glass from a craft store." Cassandra laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. "Oh honey, I told you before. Andy Maya loves her flea market finds. It's probably some healing crystal nonsense she got for $10 at a hippie shop." "Let me see it closer," Skylar demanded, reaching out across the table. She didn't ask politely. She didn't say please. She just reached across with her sticky hands, still covered in syrup from the French toast, and grabbed at my necklace without any permission whatsoever. That was the precise moment the energy in the entire room shifted dramatically. I felt the heat rising in my chest, spreading through my body. Not shame anymore, but cold, calculated anger. Sharp, focused anger. They thought I was nothing. They genuinely believed I was their perpetual punching bag, their emotional dumping ground. "Be very careful, Skylar," I said, my voice dropping low and dangerous. "That's not a toy to play with." But she was already pulling at the clasp aggressively, her acrylic nails digging painfully into the sensitive skin of my neck. "It's ugly anyway," she sneered with complete contempt. "Why would you even wear something this hideous?" And then she pulled hard, too hard. The white gold clasp dug sharply into my pulse point before giving way with a sickening metallic click. I gasped as the necklace was violently ripped from my neck, leaving an angry red welt across my dark skin. Skylar didn't even notice she had physically hurt me. She was too busy holding her prize up to the chandelier light, turning it over carelessly in her grease-stained fingers like it was a worthless piece of playground gravel. "See, Mom?" Skylar shrieked, her voice piercing through all the dining room conversation. "It's so heavy and rough. Why would anyone wear a rock, Annie Maya? It's literally scratchy and uncomfortable." My hand instinctively went to my bare neck, covering the spot where the cool metal had rested just seconds before. That necklace wasn't just jewelry to me. It was the very first thing I bought for myself after my second pharmaceutical patent was successfully licensed. It was raw Tanzanian tanzanite, completely unpolished and ancient, set in a custom band designed to look like twisted DNA helixes. To me, it represented resilience, transformation, and survival. To Skylar, it was just a dirty purple stone that wasn't Instagram-worthy. "Skylar, please give that back to me right now," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "It's very delicate, and it's definitely not for playing around with." Cassandra waved her fork dismissively in the air, not even bothering to look up from her plate. "Oh, relax, Maya. Let the poor girl examine it. She's an artist. She appreciates different textures and materials. Besides, it's not like it's real diamonds or emeralds or anything valuable. If she accidentally drops it, what's the absolute worst that could happen? It's already just a rock." Derek snorted loudly into his drink, nearly choking. "Yeah, Maya. Don't be so incredibly stingy. You probably dug that thing up in your own backyard while you were planting petunias anyway. Let the kid have some fun with it. She's been practicing vocal scales for 6 straight hours today. She deserves a little distraction and entertainment." I looked directly at my mother, Gloria, expecting her to say something, anything, about basic manners, about not violently snatching things from other people. But she just sighed heavily and took a long sip of her mimosa, avoiding all eye contact with me. "Stop making such a ridiculous scene, Maya," my mother said, her eyes cold and completely devoid of maternal warmth. "It's just costume jewelry from some street vendor. You're making Skylar feel unnecessarily bad. Look at her face right now." I looked at Skylar carefully. She didn't look bad or guilty at all. She looked absolutely triumphant. She looked like a predator who had just successfully snatched a helpless rabbit from a trap. She was tossing my necklace carelessly from one hand to the other, testing its weight, her eyes glinting with a disturbing mix of curiosity and pure malice. She knew she wasn't supposed to take it forcefully. That was exactly the point of her actions. In this toxic household, boundaries simply didn't apply to Skylar. She was the golden prodigy. I was just the convenient prop. "That is not costume jewelry," I said firmly, my voice tight with barely controlled emotion. "It's extremely delicate. Skylar, please hand it to me immediately." Skylar pouted dramatically, her lower lip jutting out in a practiced expression of victimhood she'd perfected over years. "Mom, Annie Maya is being really mean to me. She's practically yelling at me for no reason." "I'm not yelling at you," I said, though internally I desperately wanted to scream. "I just want my personal property returned to me right now." Cassandra rolled her eyes dramatically and slammed her linen napkin onto the table with force. "My God, Maya, you are so incredibly dramatic about everything. It's literally 5 minutes of your precious time. Just let her hold it and examine it. You act like it's the British crown jewels. It's probably full of negative energy anyway, coming from whatever thrift store dumpster you fished it out of." The disrespect was absolutely suffocating, crushing my chest. They didn't just devalue my possessions and my taste. They actively devalued my fundamental right to own nice things, to have boundaries. In their warped perception, I wasn't allowed to have items that were off limits. I was the designated family servant, and my personal belongings were apparently public property for them to use and abuse. I watched Skylar run her fingernail along the raw edge of the tanzanite, a stone that had formed deep in the earth over millions of years under extreme pressure, and I felt a crack forming in my own carefully maintained composure. They had absolutely no idea what she was holding in her careless hands. They had no idea whatsoever who I really was. Beneath the flawless facade, Skylar slipped the heavy metal chain over her hand. It was far too large for her slender wrist, sliding all the way down to her forearm like an oversized shackle. She held her arm up high, twisting it dramatically this way and that, making an exaggerated show of inspecting it with theatrical disgust for her invisible audience. Mom is totally right, she giggled, looking over at Cassandra, who was busy refilling her glass yet again. Auntie Maya really does wear absolute trash from flea markets and garage sales. It doesn't even sparkle under the light, Mom. Is this actually plastic? It feels exactly like cheap plastic. Cassandra let out a short, sharp laugh that cut through the room. I told you, honey. Your aunt has very specific tastes that nobody else understands. She likes things that genuinely look like they were dug directly out of the ground. Probably because that's literally where she spends all her working time anyway. It's not plastic, I said, my voice tight in my throat, my jaw clenched. It's white gold and raw tanzanite, and it was custom made by a master jeweler. Please take it off immediately, Skylar. It's not a toy for you to play with. White gold? Derek choked on his whiskey, coughing loudly and dramatically. He slammed his hand hard on the table, his face turning bright red with amusement. Maya, come on now. You don't have to lie to us to try to impress anyone here. We all know you're on an extremely tight budget. There's absolutely no shame in wearing costume jewelry. You bought that at the swap meet down on Westheimer Road, right? I've seen a vendor there selling rocks exactly like that one. $5 a pop maximum. The entire table erupted in cruel laughter. Even my mother, Gloria, cracked a knowing smile, shaking her head slowly, as if I were a small child telling an absolutely ridiculous tall tale. Oh, just let her dream, Derek, my mother said, with false sympathy. If Maya wants to pretend her little trinkets are valuable, just let her. It's completely harmless fantasy. It wasn't harmless at all. They were systematically stripping away my dignity, layer by layer, methodically reducing my genuine achievements to childish fantasies and my valuable possessions to worthless garbage. I watched Skylar feed off their toxic energy like a parasite. She saw that humiliating me was a game everyone was playing, and she desperately wanted to be declared the winner. She stood up on her chair, towering over me like some kind of twisted queen. She began shaking her arm violently, flailing her wrist back and forth with aggressive force. The heavy stone slapped against her skin with dull, thudding sounds, but she didn't stop her performance. Look at me, she shrieked, spinning around dangerously on the chair. I'm Auntie Maya. I play with dirt and wear ugly rocks. I'm so weird and poor. Skylar, get down from there right now, I said firmly, standing up abruptly. My chair scraped loudly against the floor, but absolutely no one else moved to help. They were enjoying the show far too much to intervene. She stopped spinning and looked down at me, her eyes glinting with pure malice and entitlement. She looked at the necklace dangling from her wrist, then at the solid slab of Italian granite that served as their dining table. You said it's a real stone, right, Annie? She said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that everyone could still hear. Real stones are super hard. They don't break easily. Let's test it right now. Don't you dare, I warned, taking a step forward, my heart pounding. If it's really real, it should be able to take a little hit, right? She taunted with a cruel smile. Let's see if Annie is lying to everyone. She raised her arm high above her head in slow motion. The movement was deliberate, calculated, and absolutely terrifying to witness. I saw the muscles in her arm tense. I saw the anticipation lighting up her face. She wasn't just a spoiled child in that horrifying moment. She was a perfect reflection of everything her parents had taught her about entitlement. She genuinely believed she was entitled to destroy anything that belonged to me, because in her twisted world, I didn't matter at all. She brought her arm down with full force. The sound was absolutely sickening. It wasn't the hollow clatter of plastic hitting stone. It was the sharp geometric snap of white gold giving way under extreme force, followed by the dry crunch of a precious gemstone fracturing into pieces. Time seemed to freeze completely as my necklace exploded against the granite table. The custom clasp I had specifically designed to mimic the structure of DNA helixes sheared clean off. The raw tanzanite, the heart of the entire piece, split down the center, sending a shard of iridescent blue and purple skittering across the white tablecloth like a dying insect. I sat there completely frozen. My breath caught in my throat, unable to process what had just happened. $92,000. That was the insurance valuation of the piece, but the sentimental value was absolutely incalculable. It was the trophy for my first major scientific breakthrough, the physical manifestation of sleepless nights and years of being told I was just playing with flowers. Now it lay in ruins next to a plate of half-eaten croissants. Skylar stared at the broken pieces for exactly 1 second, her mouth slightly open. For one brief heartbeat, I thought she might actually apologize. I thought the reality of what she had done might somehow penetrate her thick armor of entitlement. But then she simply shrugged and brushed the white gold chain off her wrist like it was a dead insect, completely unbothered. "Oops," she said, her voice devoid of any real regret or remorse. "I told you it was brittle and fake, Annie. You should buy better quality stuff." "See, Mom? It broke right away. It was totally fake costume jewelry." I reached out with a trembling hand to pick up the main fragment of the tanzanite. The fracture line was jagged and devastating, destroying the integrity of the stone completely. It was ruined, irreparably ruined. "Oh my God, Maya, stop looking like someone just died," Cassandra huffed, rolling her eyes dramatically. "It's just a bracelet or necklace or whatever. I'll buy you a new one at Target tomorrow. They have those cute little beaded ones you probably like. They're probably way sturdier than that junk anyway." Derek leaned back in his chair and let out a bellow of laughter that literally shook his jowls. He slapped the table hard, making all the silverware jump and rattle. "You definitely proved your point, Skylar. That thing was cheap as dirt." He looked directly at me, his face red and sweaty. "Come on, Maya, don't look so tragic about it. Don't make the kid feel bad over a $10 plastic toy. You're acting like she just smashed a Rolex." "Watch." "She didn't smash a Rolex," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the ringing in my ears. "She smashed something worth more than your car, Derek." But they didn't hear me, or they chose not to. My mother, Gloria, reached over and patted Skylar's hand soothingly, comforting the girl who had just destroyed my property. "It's okay, sweetie. Grandma knows you didn't mean it at all. Auntie Maya is just being overly sensitive again. She always gets so ridiculously attached to her little trinkets and things." Gloria looked at me with cold, dead eyes that held no maternal warmth whatsoever. "Clean that mess up, Maya. We're trying to eat, and nobody wants to look at your broken rocks. It's bad luck." I looked at them, really looked at them. Derek wiping grease from his lip while chuckling at my expense. Cassandra, checking her reflection in her spoon, completely indifferent to my loss. Skylar, smirking because she knew with absolute certainty that there would be no consequences for her actions. And my mother protecting the aggressor while blaming the victim. They were laughing. They were actually laughing at my pain. Something inside me snapped just as cleanly as the white gold clasp had. The grief I felt for the necklace evaporated instantly, replaced by a cold, clinical clarity. I realized in that precise moment that they would never see me. They would never respect me. And they would never stop taking from me unless I forced them to stop. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table. I didn't cry. I simply picked up the pieces of my $92,000 necklace and wrapped them carefully in my linen napkin. I placed the bundle gently in my purse. "You're right, Mom," I said, my voice steady and smooth like glass. "It was just a cheap thing. It doesn't matter at all." Derek grinned, pointing his fork at me. "See, that's the spirit. Finally showing some maturity, Maya. Maybe there's hope for you yet." I smiled back at him. It was a terrifying smile, but he was far too arrogant to notice. "Yes, Derek, I think I'm finally growing up." I stood up from the table. "Where are you going?" Cassandra asked, annoyed. "We haven't even cut the celebration cake yet." I lost my appetite. I said calmly, "I'm going home." Gloria scoffed dismissively. "Running away again, just like a child. You're ruining Skylar's celebration with your drama." I looked at my niece, who was now busy picking at her cuticles, already bored with the drama she had caused. I looked at the girl whose tuition I had paid for 10 straight years, the girl whose future was currently resting entirely on my bank account. "Happy Juilliard acceptance, Skylar," I said softly. "I hope you enjoy every single moment of it." I walked out of the dining room. I didn't go out the back door through the mudroom this time. I walked straight to the front foyer, past the ring light setup, past the curated art that belonged to the staging company Derek used for his sales. I opened the heavy mahogany front door and stepped out into the humid Houston afternoon. As I walked to my car, I pulled out my phone. I didn't call my jeweler to see if the necklace could be fixed. I opened the banking app for the Maya Bennett Foundation. I navigated to the recurring payments tab. There it was, the pending transfer for $110,000 to the Juilliard School of Music, scheduled for tomorrow morning. I tapped the screen, cancel, confirm, processing, transfer canceled. I sat in my car and watched the notification pop up. It was done. The money was gone, and the war had just begun. The room didn't fall silent because they were ashamed. It fell silent because they were waiting for me to clean up the mess my existence had apparently caused. Derek was already reaching for the whiskey bottle, his face flushed and greasy, while Cassandra picked at her salad as if the destruction of a $92,000 object was nothing more than a minor interruption to her meal. Skylar had already lost interest, tapping away on her phone again, secure in the knowledge that no matter what she broke, there would be no consequences. I stood there, my purse heavy on my shoulder, feeling a strange sensation wash over me. It wasn't the hot flush of embarrassment I was used to. It wasn't the stinging tears of rejection. It was cold. It was a deep glacial chill that started in my chest and spread to my fingertips. It was the complete absence of hope. For 32 years, I had held onto a tiny foolish hope that if I just achieved enough, if I just gave enough, they would finally see me. That hope died on the granite table alongside my tanzanite. Gloria stared at me, her fork suspended halfway to her mouth. Her eyes were hard, devoid of any maternal warmth. "Where are you going, Maya?" she snapped. "Sit down. You're making everyone uncomfortable. We haven't even discussed the logistics for Skylar's move to New York next month." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the lines of bitterness around her mouth, the calculating glint in her eyes. I saw a woman who had traded her daughter's happiness for social currency. "You're right, Mom," I said. My voice was so quiet, so devoid of emotion that Derek actually stopped pouring his whiskey to look at me. "About what?" Gloria asked, narrowing her eyes suspiciously. "I don't fit in here," I said. Gloria let out a short, dismissive huff. "Oh, stop with the self-pity. It's unbecoming. Just sit down and eat your brunch." "No," I said, and the word hung in the air, simple and absolute. I turned my back on them. I didn't storm out. I didn't slam the chair. I moved with a slow, deliberate grace that I had never allowed myself to show them before. My heels clicked rhythmically on the hardwood floor of the hallway, a steady metronome counting down the final seconds of their comfortable lives. "Hey," Derek called out, his voice booming and arrogant. "Don't be like that, Maya. Come back and have a drink." "You're being rude." I kept walking. As I reached the heavy mahogany door, I heard Cassandra mutter, "Let her go, Mom. She just wants attention. She'll be back next week," begging to help with the fundraiser. I opened the door and the humid Texas air hit my face. I stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door shut behind me. The latch clicked. It was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. As I walked down the long winding driveway toward my car, a countdown began in my head. It wasn't a countdown to an explosion, but a countdown to their extinction. 10. That was the number of years I had secretly funded the Maya Bennett Foundation. 9. That was the number of semesters I had paid for Cassandra's business degrees that she never actually used. 8. The number of times Derek had asked me for a short-term loan that never got repaid. 7. The age Skylar was when I bought her first voice coach because Cassandra said they couldn't afford it. I reached my car and unlocked it. The interior was cool and quiet, a sanctuary. I sat in the driver's seat and looked back at the house. The windows were glowing with warm light, a picture-perfect tableau of a happy, successful family. They were eating my food, drinking wine I had probably paid for indirectly, and laughing at my expense. They had no idea that the foundation of their entire existence had just walked out the door. 3, 2, 1. I pulled out my phone. The screen glowed in the darkness. I opened the browser and navigated to the donor portal for Juilliard. The payment was pending, $110,000. A scholarship for a brilliant young vocalist named Skylar. I pressed the cancel button. A confirmation box popped up. "Are you sure you want to cancel this transaction? This action cannot be undone." I looked at the house one last time. I thought about the snap of the white gold. I thought about the flea market comment. I thought about 32 years of being the dirt they walked on. I tapped yes. The screen refreshed. Transaction canceled. I put the phone down and started the engine. As I backed out of the driveway, I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel guilty. I felt lighter than I had in my entire life. The check had bounced, and so would they. I drove for 20 minutes in silence, the city lights blurring past my window like streaks of neon paint. The adrenaline from canceling the transfer was starting to fade, replaced by a dull, throbbing ache behind my eyes. I pulled into the underground garage of my building. It wasn't the street parking spot my family imagined I fought for every night. It was a private climate-controlled bay next to a vintage Porsche. But they didn't know that. They never asked where I lived. To them, I existed in a vacuum, suspended somewhere between their needs and my utility. I had just shut the car door when my phone vibrated in my purse. The screen lit up with a picture of Cassandra smiling, her perfect pageant smile. My stomach tightened. Part of me, the part that was still 5 years old and desperate for my big sister's approval, hoped she was calling to apologize. Maybe she had realized how cruel she had been. Maybe she wanted to make sure I got home safe. I slid my thumb across the screen. "Hello, Cassandra." There was no greeting, no hesitation. Just the frantic, high-pitched tone of someone who believes the world revolves around them. "Maya, thank God you answered. I'm freaking out." I leaned against the cool metal of my car. "Is this about the necklace, Cassandra? Because if you're calling to tell me it was just a rock again, I'm going to hang up." Cassandra made a noise of impatience. "Oh, my God. Get over it, Maya. I already told you I would get you a gift card to some jewelry store or something. This is important. It's about Skylar's tuition." I closed my eyes. The tuition? The money I had canceled less than an hour ago. What about it? "The portal," Cassandra said, her voice rising in pitch. "I just logged in to check the status for the fall semester. It usually says pending or processing by now, but it says payment failed." Failed, Maya? That's $55,000 per semester. I kept my voice flat. "Maybe it's a glitch." "It can't be a glitch," Cassandra snapped. "I called the registrar and they said the funds were retracted." Retracted? Who does that? "We have deposits due on Monday. We have the flight to New York booked for the orientation trip. I can't pay for all that right now. Derek's commission check is late and we're a little liquid poor at the moment." Liquid poor? That was code for broke, but wearing Gucci. "So what do you want me to do about it?" I asked. "I'm just the florist, remember?" "Exactly," Cassandra said, and I could hear the sneer in her voice even through the phone. "And you're always working in the gardens of those wealthy people in River Oaks. You hear things. You know who the donors are. Maybe you know who runs this anonymous foundation." I gripped the phone tighter. "You want me to ask my clients if they forgot to pay your daughter's tuition?" "Yes," Cassandra said, as if it were the most logical thing in the world. "Just ask around. See if anyone forgot to sign a check or if their accountant made a mistake. Tell them Skylar is a prodigy. Tell them it would be a tragedy to lose her talent because of a banking error. You're good at begging, Maya. You've been begging for our attention for years. Put it to good use." The air in the garage suddenly felt very thin. She was asking me, the person she had just humiliated, to go hat in hand to strangers to fund her lifestyle. She had no idea she was speaking to the donor. She had no idea. She was asking the bank to reopen the vault she had just tried to burn down. "I'll see what I can do," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "Good," Cassandra said. "And Maya, fix your attitude before you talk to them. Nobody likes a sour face. That's probably why you're still single. Fix this for me, and maybe I'll let you sit at the main table next Thanksgiving." The line went dead. She hung up without a goodbye, without a thank you. I stood there in the silence of the garage, staring at the phone. She wanted me to fix it. She wanted me to use my connections to save her. I walked toward the elevator that required a biometric scan to open. I pressed my thumb against the glass. The door slid open, revealing the gold-mirrored interior. "I will fix it, all right," I whispered to my reflection. "I will fix it so permanently you will never be able to break anything of mine again." The elevator doors slid open directly into my living room, revealing a silence so profound it felt like a physical embrace. The air inside was cool and smelled of white tea and sandalwood, not the damp soil and fertilizer my mother always claimed clung to my skin. I kicked off my muddy flats and stepped onto the heated marble floors. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Houston skyline sprawled out before me, a glittering grid of ambition and light. My family thought I lived in a cramped apartment in 3rd Ward, trying to make ends meet selling flower arrangements at the farmer's market. They thought I drove a 10-year-old Honda because I couldn't afford a new one. They had no idea that the entire top floor of the Arabella high-rise belonged to the girl they made eat in the midroom. I walked past the custom Italian sectional and the original Kehindwili painting hanging on the west wall. Cassandra would have called it a print. She would have asked how much it cost before asking what it meant or who the artist was. I went straight to the master suite. The walk-in closet was larger than my childhood bedroom, lined with rows of clothes I never wore around them. Silk, cashmere, and structured blazers that whispered power instead of screaming for attention like Cassandra's sequined disasters. I approached the full-length mirror at the end of the room. I pressed my palm against the glass in a specific sequence. The mirror slid silently to the left, revealing a steel wall safe embedded in the concrete core of the building. I keyed in the code, a series of numbers that corresponded to the date I filed my first patent. The heavy door swung open with a soft hydraulic hiss. Inside, it wasn't stacks of cash or gold bars. It was paper. Thick cream-colored paper bound in leather folders. United States Patent Number 10,847,293. Method for the extraction and stabilization of rare bioactive compounds. That single document was worth more than Derek's entire car inventory combined. Next to it were the licensing agreements with the Swiss pharmaceutical companies, the ones that paid me royalties every time someone bought a prescription medication in Zurich or Singapore. I took the linen napkin from my purse and unfolded it gently. The broken pieces of the tanzanite glittered under the recessed lighting. It looked tragic sitting there next to the proof of my genius. I placed the shattered stone on the velvet shelf right beside the deed to the building my sister lived in. That was another secret I kept. The shell company that owned their mortgage note belonged to me. I had bought it 8 months ago when the bank threatened to foreclose. I had saved them then, without them ever knowing, just to keep a roof over Skylar's head. I closed the safe. The mirror slid back into place, hiding the truth once again. My reflection stared back at me. I didn't look like a florist. I looked like a woman who was done being stepped on. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I had on speed dial. It rang once. Maya, it's late. Is everything all right? It was David, my attorney. His voice was sharp, alert, professional. I'm fine, David, I said, walking over to the window to look down at the city that looked so small from this height, but we need to make some administrative changes to the foundation. Okay. What kind of changes? I want to terminate the music scholarship fund, I said, my voice devoid of hesitation. David paused. For the next semester? No, I said, permanently. Revoke the acceptance of the upcoming invoice. And David, I want you to freeze the anonymous grants for the house maintenance, too. The landscaping, the pool service, the roof repairs. Cut it all. Maya, are you sure? David asked, his voice carefully neutral. That family relies on those grants. Without the maintenance fund, they'll fall behind on the HOEFs. They could lose the house. I pressed my hand against the cold glass of the window. I know, David, that's the point. They like to call me a florist. It's time I did some pruning. Kill the funding tonight. I hung up the phone and watched the lights of the city blur. I wasn't the poor relation anymore. I was the hand of God in their lives, and I had just closed my fist. The lobby of Derek's car dealership smelled of aggressive cologne and over-leveraged ambition. It was a glass and steel temple to the kind of money that shouted because it was terrified of silence. I was there for a reason. That felt almost laughable now. I had left my sunglasses in his SUV 3 weeks ago when he deigned to give me a ride to the nursery, and he had texted me demanding I come get them because they were cluttering his center console. Even in doing a favor, he had to make me feel like a burden. I walked past the receptionist, who was too busy filing her nails to look up at a woman in work boots and a canvas jacket. I knew where his corner office was. He liked to brag that it had the best view of the freeway, but I knew it also had the highest rent in the building. As I approached the frosted glass door, I heard his voice. It wasn't the booming, confident baritone he used at parties. It was high-thin and edged with a panic that made the hair on my arms stand up. Please listen to me, Marcus. I just need 48 hours. I stopped. The door was cracked open just an inch. Through the gap, I could see him. Derek was pacing back and forth, his expensive suit jacket thrown on the floor, his tie loosened. He was sweating. He looked like a man who was watching the water rise above his chin. I'm not trying to dodge you, Marcus. I swear the liquidity is there. It's just tied up in transfers. He paused, listening to whoever was on the other end of the line. I pressed myself against the wall, out of sight. Marcus, that wasn't a bank. That was a bookie or a loan shark. No, don't come to the house, Derek hissed, his voice dropping to a terrified whisper. My wife is there. My daughter is there. If you show up, it ruins everything. Just give me until Tuesday. He stopped pacing and leaned heavily against his desk, gripping the edge until his knuckles turned white. Listen, the money is coming. My daughter got into that fancy music school, Juilliard. Yeah, the one with the huge tuition. There's a scholarship fund. A private donor drops $55,000 into the account for the first semester next week. My breath hitched in my chest. I stood frozen, my hand hovering over my mouth. He was talking about my money. He was talking about the grant I had set up to ensure Skylar had a future. I have access to the custodial account, Derek said into the phone, his voice gaining a desperate sort of confidence. As soon as the wire hits, I'll transfer it out. I'll pay you the 40 grand I owe, plus the interest. And I'll put the rest into that cryptocurrency you told me about. I'll double it before the tuition bill is actually due. She'll never know the money was missing. It's a victimless crime, Marcus. Just a short-term loan. A victimless crime. He was planning to embezzle his own daughter's education fund to pay off a gambling debt and throw the rest into a volatile crypto market. He was going to gamble away Skylar's future because he couldn't control his own impulses. I watched him wipe his forehead with his sleeve. He looked pathetic. He looked dangerous. This was the man who had mocked my career the day before. This was the man who called me a florist while he plotted to harvest his own child's potential. Okay, Tuesday. I promise you'll have your cash. Just stay away from the house. He hung up the phone and slumped into his leather chair, burying his face in his hands. I backed away slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't go in to get my sunglasses. I didn't confront him. I turned around and walked back toward the elevators, my steps silent on the plush carpet. I had felt a twinge of guilt the night before when I canceled the funding. I had worried that maybe I was punishing Skylar for her parents' sins. But now, as I stepped into the elevator and watched the doors close, I knew I had done the right thing. If I had sent that money, it would never have reached the school. It would have gone straight into the pocket of a man named Marcus. Derek thought he was waiting for a lifeline. He had no idea I had already cut the rope. I sat at the small bistro table, gripping my iced coffee until my knuckles turned white. My mother, Gloria, had demanded we meet at this trendy cafe in River Oaks, not because she wanted to see me, but because she wanted to be seen. When she finally breezed in 20 minutes late, she didn't apologize. She just adjusted her oversized sunglasses and frowned at my table in the corner. Why do you always pick the darkest corner, Maya? She sighed, sliding into the chair opposite me without a hug or a hello. It's like you're trying to disappear. Although with that skin tone, I suppose it's hard to blend in anywhere. There it was, the comment. It always started like that, subtle at first, then sharp as a razor. I'm just drinking coffee, Mom, I said, keeping my voice neutral. You said you wanted to talk about the family reunion. Gloria waved her hand dismissively. We can talk about that later. First, we need to talk about you. Look at you, Maya. You're sitting here in the dark wearing navy blue. Don't you know any better? You're already so dark-skinned. Wearing dark colors just makes you look like a shadow. You disappear completely. I looked down at my linen blouse. It was elegant, professional, and expensive. But to Gloria, it was just another mistake. I like this color, I said quietly. Well, it does nothing for you, she snapped, taking a sip of the water the waiter had placed down. Look at your sister. Cassandra knows how to dress. She wears pastels, creams, golds. She knows how to highlight her complexion. She has that beautiful caramel skin that lights up a room. She's the face of this family, Maya. You need to understand that. The face of the family. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. So what does that make me, Mom? I asked, looking her directly in the eyes. If she's the face, what am I? Gloria let out a short, cruel laugh. Don't be dramatic. You have your place. You're the strong one, the worker. You have that sturdy build and that skin that can take the sun. You were built for labor, Maya. Cassandra was built for adoration. Her job is to shine and elevate our status. Your job is to support her, to be the background that makes her pop. I felt the air leave my lungs. It wasn't just favoritism. It was deep internalized hatred that she was spewing at me over a latte. She genuinely believed that my value was intrinsically lower because of the melanin in my skin. She believed I was designed by nature to be a servant to my lighter-skinned sister. "You want me to be her shadow?" I whispered. "I want you to know your role," Gloria said, leaning forward, her eyes hard behind her glasses. "Cassandra is marrying up. She's bringing prestige to this family. You need to stop trying to compete with her. Stop buying that flashy jewelry. Stop trying to act like you're on her level. You're the soil, Maya. She's the flower. Without you, she can't grow." But nobody puts the dirt in a vase. I looked at the woman who gave birth to me. I saw the self-hatred she had projected onto me for 3 decades. I saw the way she measured love by the shade of a paper bag, and I realized that no amount of money, no amount of success would ever make me bright enough for her. I picked up my purse. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just looked at her and nodded. "You're right, Mom," I said, standing up. "I am the soil, and I think it's time I stopped feeding the flower." I walked out into the bright Houston sun, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to hide from it. I let it warm my dark skin, and I felt powerful. I sat at the glass desk in my home office, the glow of 3 high-definition monitors illuminating my face. To my family, I was a woman who spent her days with dirt under her fingernails. But here in this room, I was the architect of their reality. I opened the secure email client for the Maya Bennett Foundation. The interface was sleek, minimalist, and unforgiving, just like me. I pulled up the draft I had written in my head 1,000 times over the last 24 hours. It was addressed to the Dean of Admissions at the Juilliard School. I carbon copied Cassandra on the message. The subject line was simple: "Urgent notice regarding scholarship award for Skylar Williams." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I thought about the way Skylar had snapped my necklace. I thought about Derek sweating in his office, plotting to steal this very money to pay a loan shark. I thought about my mother telling me I was born to be a shadow. They wanted money. They wanted prestige. They wanted to stand on my shoulders and call themselves tall. I began to type. "Dear Dean of Admissions, please be advised that the Maya Bennett Foundation is exercising its right to immediately suspend the full tuition grant previously awarded to student Skylar Williams." I paused. That was the what. Now for the why. I needed language that was vague enough to be legal, but specific enough to terrify them. This decision follows a standard review of the beneficiary's financial environment. We have received credible intelligence suggesting that the funds intended for educational purposes are at high risk of misappropriation due to the financial instability and ethical violations of the custodial guardians. Furthermore, the foundation maintains a strict moral integrity clause regarding the conduct of its beneficiaries and their families. Recent events have demonstrated a misalignment with our core values of humility, respect, and honesty. I read it over. It was cold. It was corporate. It was devastating. It didn't just take away the money. It stained their reputation. It told the school that this family was a liability. Therefore, effective immediately, all pending transfers are canceled. The grant is revoked indefinitely. We wish the student the best in securing alternative funding. Sincerely, the Board of Trustees. I was the board. I was the trust. I was the bank. I took a sip of my white tea. This was it. The moment the ground fell out from under them. I moved the cursor to the send button. I didn't hesitate. I didn't flinch. Click, send. Across the city in the living room of the house I secretly owned. Cassandra was likely pouring another glass of wine, probably celebrating the trip to New York she had booked on a credit card she couldn't pay off. She was probably laughing at me right now, telling Derek how she put me in my place. Her phone was sitting on the marble island, the screen dark. And then it happened. Ping. The notification light flashed. A single white blink in the darkness of their ignorance. The screen lit up with the preview of the email. Important scholarship update. Cassandra reached for the phone, her manicured nails clicking against the glass. She probably thought it was a confirmation of the wire transfer. She probably thought it was the money Derek was waiting to steal. She unlocked the phone. I leaned back in my chair and watched the city lights. I could almost hear the scream from here. The scream that tore through the mansion was not just loud. It was the sound of a lifestyle imploding. Cassandra dropped her phone onto the quartz countertop as if it had burned her hand. Her face, usually composed for social media, was twisted into a mask of pure terror. What happened? Derek rushed into the kitchen, his eyes wide and frantic. He had been pacing the living room, waiting for the wire transfer notification so he could siphon it off to pay his loan shark. They canceled it, Cassandra gasped, clutching her chest. The foundation. They sent an email. Funding suspended indefinitely due to ethical violations. Derek snatched the phone from the counter. That's impossible. Ethical violations? What does that even mean? He scrolled through the email, his hands shaking. This has to be a mistake. A computer error. We need that money, Cassandra. The tuition deposit is due in 48 hours. It's not just the tuition, Cassandra wailed, sinking onto a bar stool. Derek? I did something. Derek looked up from the phone, sweat beading on his forehead. What did you do? Cassandra sobbed. The acceptance letter came last week. The foundation has paid for everything for 10 years, so I wanted to celebrate. I wanted Skylar to have the full experience before she started school. Derek went very still. What did you do, Cassandra? I booked the trip to New York, she whispered, tears streaming down her face, ruining her spray tan. First class tickets, the suite at the plaza, the private shopping appointment at Bergdorf's. I put it all on the black card. The blood drained from Derek's face. The black card. The one we maxed out last month. The one I told you not to touch until my commission check cleared. I used the savings, Cassandra cried, the emergency fund. I transferred it all to pay down the card so I could book the trip. I thought the $55,000 was coming tomorrow. I thought we would just pay ourselves back. Derek looked like he was going to be sick. You spent the savings, all of it. It was $18,000, Derek. Cassandra defended herself, her voice rising to a shriek. I wanted my daughter to have a nice graduation gift. How was I supposed to know the scholarship would get cut? We have nothing now. Zero. Derek slammed his fist onto the island, cracking the expensive stone surface. We don't just have nothing, Cassandra. We have less than nothing. If that tuition isn't paid, Skylar loses her spot. If that money doesn't hit the account, I can't pay Marcus. Who's Marcus? Cassandra asked, sniffing. Derek ignored her. He was doing mental math, calculating the speed of his own destruction. They were standing in $1 million house wearing $5,000 worth of clothes, and they didn't have enough liquid cash to buy a pizza. The facade wasn't just cracking, it was falling down around their ears. Fix it, Cassandra demanded, reverting to her usual entitlement. Call the school, call the foundation, tell them it's a mistake, tell them who we are. Derek stared at her. They know who we are, Cassandra. That's the problem. They know exactly who we are. From the hallway, Skylar walked in holding her phone, oblivious to the fact that her parents had just bankrupted her future. Mom, she whined, the Wi-Fi is slow. Can you upgrade the data plan? Cassandra looked at her daughter, and for the first time in her life, she didn't see a prodigy. She saw a bill she couldn't pay. The ring light reflected in Cassandra's tear-filled eyes as she adjusted the angle of her phone. She was sitting in her bedroom wearing a simple white t-shirt and no makeup, a calculated move to look vulnerable. Behind her, the carefully curated background of family photos and soft lighting created the perfect stage for her performance. She took a shaky breath, pressed record, and let the first tear fall right on cue. Hey guys, she whispered, her voice trembling just enough to sound authentic. I know I usually come on here to share happy moments and lifestyle tips, but today I have to share something really hard, something that has devastated our family. She paused, looking away from the camera as if too overcome with emotion to continue. In reality, she was checking the viewer count. As the numbers climbed, she wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. You all know how hard my daughter Skylar has worked. She's a prodigy, a vocal virtuoso. Getting into Juilliard was her dream, and we thought we had secured a scholarship from a prestigious foundation to cover her tuition. We trusted them. We built our lives around their promise. She sniffled, leaning closer to the lens. But today, we found out it was all a lie. The foundation pulled the funding without warning, without explanation. They just cut us off days before the semester starts. We're victims of a cruel scam, a bait and switch designed to hurt a young artist. I watched the live stream from my office, my expression unreadable. She was good. I had to give her that. She was painting herself as the innocent mother fighting for her child's future, conveniently leaving out the part where she had spent the emergency fund on a luxury vacation. We're heartbroken, Cassandra continued, her voice gaining strength. We've already booked flights, made arrangements. And now we're facing a financial crisis because of someone else's malice. We don't know what to do. Skylar is upstairs crying right now. Her dreams are being crushed because some faceless organization decided to play God with our lives. The comments were already flooding in. Support, outrage, offers of help. People were buying it. They saw a beautiful mother in distress, not a manipulator scrambling to cover her own tracks. That's why she looked directly into the camera, her eyes wide and pleading. I've started a GoFundMe. I hate asking for help. I really do. But for Skylar, I'll do anything. If you can spare even $1 to help us fight this injustice, to help us keep her dream alive, we would be forever grateful. We're not just fighting for tuition. We're fighting against a system that thinks it can use families like ours as pawns. I leaned back in my chair, slow clapping in the silence of my penthouse. A system. She called me a system. She called my generosity a scam. It was impressive, really. The audacity, the sheer, unadulterated narcissism. She ended the stream with a brave little smile and a whisper. Thank you for listening. Love you guys. I closed the window. She thought she had won the public opinion war. She thought she could crowdfund her way out of the hole she had dug. But she had made a fatal mistake. In her rush to play the victim, she had accused a charitable foundation of fraud. And unlike her, my foundation had lawyers. Lots of them. I picked up my phone and dialed David. Did you see it? I asked. I saw it, David replied, his voice dry. Defamation, libel, fraudulent solicitation of funds. Shall I draft the cease and desist or go straight to the platform to have the campaign removed? Let it run for a few hours, I said. Let her think she's winning. Let her spend the money in her head. Then hit her with everything. I want the platform to ban her. I want the donors to demand refunds. And David, I want a public statement from the foundation clarifying exactly why the funding was pulled. Ethical violations. Make sure that phrase is in bold. Understood? I hung up. Cassandra wanted an audience. I was going to give her one she would never forget. The morning sun was already blazing as I walked from the farmer's market to my car, my arms full of heirloom tomato plants. The air smelled of exhaust and hot asphalt, a stark contrast to the quiet cool of my greenhouse. I was halfway across the parking lot when a shadow fell over me. Maya, wait up. It was Derek. He was leaning against the hood of my Honda, wearing sunglasses that cost more than my first car. He looked casual, relaxed even, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands kept balling into fists in his pockets. He was desperate, and desperate men were dangerous. I didn't stop walking. I have nothing to say to you, Derek. Move. He pushed off the car, blocking my path. His smile was tight, forced. Come on, Maya. Don't be like that. We're family. I just want to talk. I shifted the crate of plants to my hip. We stopped being family when you let your daughter break my property and then laughed about it. Now get out of my way before I call security. He laughed, a nervous, jittery sound. Security? You think you're some kind of VIP? Look, I know you're mad. I get it, but we can fix this. You and me. We can make a deal. A deal? I raised an eyebrow. What kind of deal could you possibly offer me, Derek? You're broke. Your wife is begging strangers on the internet for cash, and you're standing in a parking lot trying to intimidate a woman you think is a florist. His face darkened for a second, his mask slipping. I know you have money, Maya. I've seen your receipts. You buy high-end fertilizer. You have good tools. You've been saving up, right? Squirreling away your little pennies from selling vegetables. I almost laughed. He thought my fortune came from selling tomatoes. He thought my wealth was a coffee can full of cash under a mattress. So what if I have savings? I asked, playing along. Derek stepped closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I need a loan. Just a small one. $25,000. Cash. No paper trail. $25,000. It was pocket change to me. I had spent more than that on a single lab microscope. But to him it was a lifeline. And why would I give you $25,000, Derek? Because I can help you, he said, his eyes gleaming. I can talk to Gloria. I can talk to Cassandra. I can tell them to lay off. I can make them treat you better. You want a seat at the table, right? You want to be respected. I can make that happen. For 25 grand, I'll be your biggest advocate. I stared at him. He was selling me basic human decency. He was putting a price tag on respect. He thought my dignity was something he could barter with, something he could grant me if I paid his ransom. You think I want to buy my way back into that house? I asked, my voice cold. You think I want to pay for the privilege of being insulted by you and your wife? Derek shrugged. Everyone wants to belong, Maya, and let's be honest. You're lonely. You have no one. We're all you've got. 25,000 is a small price to pay for family. It was such a pure distillation of their worldview. Everything was transactional. Love was a commodity. Relationships were leverage. I set the crate of plants down on the pavement. I straightened up, looking him in the eye. I'm going to tell you this once, Derek. I don't want your help. I don't want your advocacy. And I definitely don't want your version of family. Derek's face twisted into a sneer. Don't be stupid, Maya. You think you're better than us because you have a few bucks saved up? You're still just the help. You'll always be the help. Now give me the money, or I'll make sure you never see Skylar again. There it was. The threat, the leverage. He thought he could use my love for his daughter against me, but he didn't know that I had already cut the cord. He didn't know that Skylar was just another bad investment I had written off. I picked up my crate. No, Derek, get out of my way. He lunged for me, grabbing my arm. Listen to me, you ungrateful little. I didn't flinch. I didn't pull away. I just looked at his hand on my arm, and then I looked at his face. Let go, I said, my voice low and calm, or you will regret it. He hesitated. He saw something in my eyes he had never seen before. It wasn't fear. It wasn't submission. It was power. Pure, unadulterated power. He released me, stepping back as if he had been burned. You're making a mistake, Maya, he spat. A big mistake. I unlocked my car and put the plants in the back seat. I got in and started the engine. As I drove away, I saw him in the rearview mirror, standing alone in the empty parking lot, a man who thought he was a king, realizing he was just a pawn. I paused with my hand on the door handle. The metal was hot against my palm, baking under the Houston sun. Derek thought he had won. He thought his vague threat about cutting me off from Skylar had landed. He stood there panting slightly, his chest heaving under his linen shirt, expecting me to crumble. He expected me to reach for my checkbook and pay the toll to cross the bridge back into their good graces. I turned back to face him slowly. I let my eyes travel over him, from his thinning hair to his scuffed loafers. I took in the desperation radiating off him like heat waves. $25,000, I repeated, my voice flat. That's the price tag you put on dignity. That's what it costs to get you to tell my mother to stop abusing me. Derek smirked, thinking he had me. It's a bargain, Maya. Think of it as an investment in your future happiness. You pay the fee. You get the family. Simple economics. I threw my head back and laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a sharp, incredulous sound that startled a flock of pigeons nearby. The absurdity of it was almost beautiful. He was trying to extort a woman who could buy his entire dealership and fire him before lunch. He was trying to shake down a lioness for loose change. Derek's smile faltered. What's so funny? You are, I said, wiping a tear of mirth from my eye. You really have no idea, do you? You think you're offering me a lifeline, but you're just trying to sell me a ticket to a sinking ship. I stepped closer to him, invading his personal space. He flinched, surprised by my aggression. You think my value is only $25,000, Derek? I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper that cut through the parking lot noise. You think that's all I'm worth? A used car, a few months of rent. You think that's the ceiling of my existence? Derek stepped back, unnerved. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm offering you a way back in. I don't want back in, I said. And as for my value, let's just say you couldn't afford me even if you sold every lie you've ever told. I turned around and got into my car. The door slammed shut with a solid, reassuring thud, sealing me inside my climate-controlled fortress. I pressed the start button and the engine purred to life. Derek was banging on the window now, his face twisted in ugly, impotent rage. Open the door, Maya. Don't walk away from me. You need us. You're nothing without us. I put the car in reverse. I didn't look at him. I looked at the rearview camera, watching the guidelines curve as I backed out. I'm not nothing, Derek, I whispered to the empty car. I'm the one who signs the checks. I shifted into drive and peeled out of the lot, leaving him standing there in a cloud of exhaust fumes, screaming at a woman who had already left him in the dust. He was furious, not because I said no, but because for the first time in his life, he realized he was the one who was small. My phone vibrated against the glass surface of my desk, interrupting the quiet hum of the climate control system in my penthouse laboratory. I glanced at the screen. It was Skylar. I let it ring 3 times before answering. I wanted her to sit in the silence for a moment. I wanted her to feel the distance between us. "Hello, Skylar," I answered, my voice calm and professional. "Annie Maya." Her voice was wet and thick with tears, but it sounded practiced, like a performance she had rehearsed in front of a mirror. "I'm so scared. The school just emailed. They said if the tuition isn't paid in 48 hours, they're going to give my spot to someone on the wait list. I'm going to lose everything." I leaned back in my ergonomic chair, watching the data stream on my monitor. "That sounds very stressful, Skylar. Have you spoken to your parents?" "Mom is crying in her room and Dad is yelling on the phone in the garage," Skylar sobbed. "Nobody is helping me, and I just kept thinking about you, about how mean I was at brunch." Here it came. The pivot, the hook. "I'm really sorry about your necklace, Annie Maya. I really am. I was just stressed about school, and I took it out on you. It was just an accident. I know it was just a cheap thing, but I shouldn't have broken it. Just a cheap thing." Even in her apology, she had to devalue me. She had to remind me that my possessions were beneath her. "It's okay, Skylar," I lied, letting the line hang loose to see what she would reel in. "I knew you would understand." She sniffled, her voice instantly brightening. "You're always the nice one, Auntie. You're the only one who gets me. That's why I called. I have another problem. A really big one." "What is it, Skylar?" "Well, I was so upset about the tuition thing that I threw my music folder and I forgot my vocal sheet music was inside. I spilled coffee all over it. Auntie, my entire repertoire. I can't go to Juilliard without my performance materials. Even if the tuition gets fixed, I need new professional sheet music and a new portfolio case." "You ruined your sheet music?" I asked. "The collection I helped you build for your audition? The one that cost $3,000 to professionally transcribe and bind?" "It was an accident," she whined. "Just like the necklace. But I found a replacement set. It's a complete vocal performance library. The seller wants $5,000 for it. And I know you have savings from your flower business. Mom says you hoard money because you don't have any kids or a husband to spend it on. So I thought maybe you could buy it for me as a late graduation gift, since you didn't get me anything else." Really nice. The audacity was breathtaking. She had destroyed a $3,000 collection in a tantrum. And now she wanted me to replace it with something even more expensive, because, in her mind, my money was just sitting there waiting for her to claim it. She thought my childlessness made my resources hers by default. $5,000 is a lot of money for a florist, Skylar, I said. "Oh, come on, Annie. Don't be stingy," she snapped, her tone sharpening. "You live in a tiny apartment and drive an old car. What else are you going to do with it? Just buy me the music library. If you do, I'll tell Mom to invite you to the lake house this summer. I'll even let you sit with us at the main table instead of with the help." She was bargaining with scraps of affection. She was offering me the privilege of being tolerated in exchange for $5,000. "I think you should ask your father," I said. "He seems to have a lot of big plans for money lately." "My father is useless," she screamed, her mask slipping completely. "He's broke. Everyone is broke except you. Just give me the money, Maya. You owe me. You're my aunt. It's your job to help me." "My job?" I looked at the patent on my wall. "My job is done, Skylar," I said, and I hung up. The heavy steel door of the private jewelry atelier buzzed and clicked open, allowing me to step into the hushed, climate-controlled sanctuary. This wasn't the kind of store found in a shopping mall with fluorescent lights and glass cases full of mass-produced baubles. This was a place where appointments were mandatory and prices were never discussed above a whisper. Marcus, the master jeweler, looked up from his workbench, his loupe reflecting the low, warm light. He stood immediately, wiping his hands on a leather apron. "Miss Bennett," he said, with a warm smile that faltered as soon as he saw my face. "You're early for your annual commission consultation. I wish I was here for a new piece, Marcus," I said, walking to the counter. I placed the linen napkin down with a heaviness that had nothing to do with the weight of the metal. "I need you to look at this." I unfolded the cloth. The shattered remains of the necklace lay there like a crime scene. The white gold twisted and snapped, The magnificent tanzanite fractured down the center, its inner fire dim and jagged, Marcus gasped. It was a visceral sound of pain, the kind an artist makes when they see a masterpiece slashed. He reached out with trembling fingers, picking up the largest shard with his tweezers. He moved it under the microscope, adjusting the focus with rapid movements. "This is a tragedy," he murmured. "Do you know what you have here? This is raw tanzanite from the Marilani Hills in Tanzania. The color saturation in the stone is among the finest I've ever seen. It takes geological miracles to forge this." "I know," I said quietly. Marcus looked up, his expression grave. "Who did this?" "This wasn't an accident. White gold doesn't snap like this from a drop. This was force. Someone deliberately destroyed it." "My niece," I said. "She thought it was plastic. She said her mother told her it was from a thrift store." Marcus stared at me in disbelief. "A thrift store?" He looked back at the stone, shaking his head. "I just updated the appraisal on this piece 2 months ago, Maya. The market for high-grade raw tanzanite has skyrocketed. The replacement value of this piece right now sits at $92,000. $92,000. I let the number hang in the air. My sister had called it trash. My brother-in-law had laughed and called it a $10 toy. They had treated a fortune like garbage because they were too ignorant to recognize value when it didn't have a designer label slapped on it. "Can you fix it?" I asked. Marcus sighed, studying the fracture lines. "I can't restore it to what it was. The stone is broken, but I can save it. I can recut the edges and reset it. We can use platinum to fill the fracture, a technique like kintsugi. It will be different. It will be sharper, but it will be even more valuable because of the platinum weight and the story it tells. Do it," I said. "And Marcus, I need something else. I need a full formal appraisal report. I want the origin of the stone, the white gold grade, and the current market value typed up on your official letterhead. I want it embossed and signed." Marcus looked at me over the rim of his glasses. He saw the cold fire in my eyes, a reflection of the stone he held. "You're going to show them," he said. "I'm going to destroy them," I corrected. "I want them to know exactly what they broke. I want them to see the number on that paper and realize that the thrift store jewelry they laughed at is worth more than their dignity." Marcus nodded, solemn and professional. "I'll have it ready by Friday. It will be the most beautiful weapon I've ever made." I walked out of the shop into the blinding afternoon sun. $92,000. I had the number. Now I just needed the audience. And thanks to the party I was about to orchestrate, I would have front row seats. To their regret, I sat in the climate-controlled silence of my car with the appraisal report resting on the passenger seat like a loaded gun. $92,000. The number burned in my mind. It was time to pull the trigger. But first, I needed to gather them all in one place. I needed a stage big enough for their humiliation. I picked up my phone and dialed Cassandra. She answered on the second ring, her voice tight with the specific stress of a woman who was maxing out credit cards to maintain an illusion. "What do you want, Maya?" she snapped. "Unless you're calling to tell me you found $25,000 in your couch cushions, I don't have time for you. The GoFundMe is stalled and I'm trying to return designer items without receipts." I took a deep breath, channeling the submissive younger sister she expected me to be. I kept my voice low and hesitant, the way I used to speak before I realized I owned the bank. "I think I found a solution, Cassandra," I said. "I was working today at the estate in River Oaks. You know, the one with the marble fountain in the circular driveway." Cassandra sighed loudly. "I don't care about your gardening job, Maya. You should care about this one," I interrupted gently. "The owner, Mrs. Hamilton, she's on the board of the Texas Arts Philanthropy Alliance. I overheard her talking on the terrace. They're looking for a new prot-G, a young vocalist to sponsor. Full ride, plus a stipend for the family to ensure the artist has a stable home environment." The line went silent. I could practically hear the gears turning in Cassandra's head. Greed was a powerful drug, and I had just offered her a fix. "Did you talk to her?" Cassandra asked, her voice suddenly sharp and hungry. "Did you mention Skylar?" "I did. I lied. I told her my niece is a vocal prodigy who was unfairly targeted by a corrupt scholarship fund. I told her you're a devoted mother fighting the system." She was very interested, Cassandra. She said she loves stories about resilience. "She wants to meet you." Cassandra gasped. "Oh, my God, this is it. This is the miracle I manifested. When can we meet her? Do I need to go to her office? I have nothing appropriate to wear." Everything is at the dry cleaners because I can't pay the bill. No, I said, closing the trap. She doesn't do office meetings. She likes to see families in their natural environment. She wants to see community support. I told her you were planning a fundraising gala at your home to support Skylar's education. A gala? Cassandra repeated, testing the word. Yes, a gala. That sounds perfect. I can invite everyone. The church group, the neighbors, Derek's clients. We can show her how beloved Skylar is. Exactly, I said. Make it big, Cassandra. Make it lavish. Mrs. Hamilton is impressed by appearances. She needs to see that you're people of substance. Cassandra was already planning. I can get the caterer to defer payment if I promise them exposure on Instagram. I can borrow the table linens from the event planner next door. Derek can get the wine somehow. Oh, Maya, this is genius. For once, you actually made yourself useful. I gripped the steering wheel tight. Just make sure it's perfect, Cassandra. Mrs. Hamilton is very particular. I'll bring her on Saturday night. You just make sure the house looks like $1 million. It will look like 10 million. Cassandra promised, her arrogance fully restored. Just stick to the gardening, Maya. Let me handle the hosting. I know how to impress rich people. You just make sure she shows up. I hung up the phone. A cold smile spread across my face. She had no idea. She thought she was preparing for a savior. She didn't know she was setting the table for her own executioner. She wanted to impress rich people. Well, she was about to meet the richest person she knew, and she wouldn't like it one bit. The house smelled of desperation and expensive lilies. It was an intoxicating blend of manic energy and reckless spending that filled every room of the mansion. Cassandra and Derek hadn't just swallowed the bait, they had choked on it. They truly believed that a billionaire philanthropist named Mrs. Hamilton was coming to save them, and they were determined to put on a show that would dazzle her into writing a blank check. I stood in the kitchen, polishing silver that Cassandra had rented an hour ago. From the hallway, I could hear Derek on the phone. His voice was hushed but urgent, carrying the specific tremor of a gambling addict doubling down on a bad hand. Marcus, listen to me. I need another 20,000. Cash tonight. He paused, listening to whatever threats the loan shark was screaming on the other end. I know I missed the Tuesday payment, Derek hissed, but this is bigger. We're hosting a whale, Marcus. A real whale. She's coming tomorrow night to drop a 6-figure sponsorship on Skylar. As soon as that check clears, I'll pay you back triple. I just need the cash to set the stage. I need the premium champagne. I need the security detail. You have to spend money to make money, right? He was borrowing money from a violent criminal to throw a party for a woman who didn't exist. He was leveraging his safety against a lie I had invented in a parking lot. It was terrifying, and it was perfect. In the living room, Cassandra was directing a crew of movers she had hired on credit. They were hauling out the furniture they actually owned, which was stained and worn, and replacing it with high-end staging pieces. White velvet sofas, lucite tables, and abstract sculptures that looked like they belonged in a museum lobby. She was literally replacing her reality with a rental. Careful with that rug, Cassandra shrieked, pointing a manicured finger at a mover. That's silk. It costs more than your truck. She turned to see me watching her. Her eyes were bright with feverish greed, pupils dilated. She looked like she was high on the potential of money. Maya, stop standing there like a statue, she snapped. Did you iron the tablecloths for the buffet? Mrs. Hamilton cannot see wrinkles. Rich people hate wrinkles. I'm finishing them now, I said, keeping my voice submissive. Good, Cassandra said, adjusting a diamond necklace that I knew she had rented from a high-end service. And make sure you stay in the kitchen tomorrow night during the party. We need someone to manage the caterers and keep the glasses full. I told Mrs. Hamilton you were our house manager. It sounds better than florist. House manager. She was demoting me from sister to staff, in her own mind, before the party even started. Of course, Cassandra, I said. Whatever helps. She looked around the room, satisfied with her fake palace. You just don't get it, Maya. This is how the world works. If they smell poverty on you, they run. You have to look like you don't need the money. That's the only way they give it to you. It's called optics. Optics. She was lecturing me on optics while standing in a house she was about to lose, wearing jewelry she didn't own, waiting for a savior who was actually her executioner. Derek walked in, wiping sweat from his forehead. He gave Cassandra a thumbs up. The cash is on the way. We're good. "We're going to pull this off." They smiled at each other, conspirators in their own demise. They thought they were building a stage for their triumph. They had no idea they were actually building the gallows. And I was the one tying the knot. The evening of the gala arrived with a blood-red sunset that painted the Houston sky in shades of warning. I had spent the entire day at the mansion, scrubbing floors, arranging flowers, and playing the role of the dutiful servant one last time. Now, as the first guests began to arrive, I slipped away to my car parked down the street. Inside the back seat was a garment bag. I unzipped it carefully. The fabric inside wasn't linen or cotton. It was silk, heavy, midnight blue silk, structured and architectural. It was a gown from the latest Elie Saab collection, a piece I had bought in Dubai 6 months ago. I slipped out of my cleaning clothes and stepped into the dress. It fit like armor, like justice given form. I reached into the glove compartment and pulled out the velvet box Marcus had given me yesterday. I opened it. The necklace lay inside, reborn. The tanzanite was still fractured, but the platinum vein running through it made it look deliberate, powerful, intentional. It wasn't just a stone anymore. It was a statement. It was proof that, broken, things could become more valuable than they ever were whole. I clasped it around my neck. The metal was cool and heavy. It felt like a promise being kept. I put on my heels, 4 inches of midnight blue leather stilettos. I checked my makeup in the rearview mirror. Dark lips, sharp winged eyeliner. I didn't look like a florist. I looked like a queen coming to reclaim her throne. I got out of the car. 2 men stepped out of the shadows behind me. They were large, silent, and wearing earpieces. My security detail. I had hired them not for protection, but for theater. I walked toward the house. I didn't go to the kitchen door. I didn't go to the side entrance. I walked straight up the driveway, my heels clicking on the pavement like gunshots. The valet stared. The guests mingling on the lawn stopped talking mid-sentence. I reached the front door. The security guard Cassandra had hired looked at me, confused. "Name?" he asked, checking his clipboard. I didn't stop. I didn't look at his list. I just looked him in the eye. "Mrs. Hamilton," I said. He stepped back immediately. He opened the door wide. I walked in, and everything changed forever.